I'm showing you the easiest way to make Mongolian beef and broccoli that tastes better than takeout and is much healthier. It's naturally sweetened with honey and cooked all in one wok or skillet for easy cleanup. Hello, my name is Nicole Bonilla, and if you love healthier recipes to our favorite foods, then you are in the right place. To make this really easy Mongolian beef, we're going to start with a really simple marinade, and this is going to help soften and tenderize our steak. So in a small bowl, I'm going to add 1/4 cup of water, and you're welcome to jot down these ingredients as we go along, or you can click on the link that's in the video description below, and that has all the details, including nutrition facts, ingredients and substitutions, and frequently asked questions. Next, we're going to add a teaspoon of soy sauce, and I'm just using some tamari soy sauce so that it's gluten-free. Next, we'll add a tablespoon of some cornstarch, which will help to thicken it up just a little bit, and 1/2 teaspoon of baking soda, which will also help tenderize the meat. And then we'll just give this a quick stir, and then we'll just set this aside. Now for the beef, there are several different cuts of meat that work really well. I found that the flank steak gives the best result, but you could also use a skirt steak or a flap steak. So before we start slicing our meat, we need to determine the direction of the grain, and that's just those natural lines running through the meat. So I can see that they're all running left to right. So that means I'm going to want to cut my pieces against the grain. But first I'm going to cut this into thirds along the grain, which will give us a little bit smaller pieces of meat. It makes them a little more bite-sized. And we want our slices to be about 1/4 inch thick, but you can see that the meat is more like 1/2 inch to 3/4. So I'm going to angle my knife and then just slice diagonally across the meat. And this gives us a little bit bigger piece of meat that is only about 1/4 inch thick. And I'll continue for the rest of the meat. And I'm using my HexClad knives, which are my favorite. Not only is the green alpaca wood handle gorgeous, they are a dream to work with. And I've included a link in the description below if you'd like to check them out. And now that our meat is all sliced up, I'm going to season it with some coarse sea salt. And then I'm just going to flip my meat over and season both sides. And that's really going to enhance the flavor of the meat. And I'll sprinkle on just a little bit of black pepper. Make sure it all gets well coated. And then we're going to add it into our bowl with our marinade. Since my hands already have meat juice on it, I'll go ahead and just mix it around by hand, making sure all that meat gets coated. Now, if you're short on time, you could skip this marinade, but it really does help to soften and tenderize the steak. And then we can set this aside. Now we're going to mix together a really simple sauce. So I started with 1/2 cup of water. You could also use beef stock if you have it. And then I'm going to add 2 tablespoons of the soy sauce, 2 tablespoons of honey, 2 tablespoons of oyster sauce, which adds some really delicious flavor, 1 tablespoon of sesame oil, 2 teaspoons of rice vinegar, 1/2 teaspoon of salt, and 3 cloves of minced garlic, and a dash of pepper. And then we're going to add 1 tablespoon of cornstarch to help thicken it up. And we'll just mix this together with a fork. The smell is absolutely amazing. And then we just set this aside. Now before we heat up our wok, we want to prepare our vegetables. So I just have 3 cups here of some broccoli florets, and I have 1/2 of a white onion that I just sliced into these long little strips. And then we can set these aside until it's their turn. Well, now that our meat is marinating, our vegetables are prepped, and our sauce is made, it's time to heat up our wok. Now you can use any skillet or wok that you like. My favorite is the HexClad wok because it combines the best of non-stick, cast iron, and stainless steel. And then I'm going to pour in 3 cups of water, and then we'll add in 1 teaspoon of salt, and then I'm putting my lid on top to help it boil a little bit quicker. So after a couple minutes, it's now boiling, so we're going to add in our broccoli, and then I'm just going to stir it around with my tongs. Now the broccoli does not have to be completely submerged. And then we're going to let this boil for about 3 minutes, and then I'm going to scoop it out into a bowl. Then I'm going to carefully take my wok over to the sink and pour out the water, and then I'll just quickly dry it out with a towel. Now a trick to make sure our meat gets nice and brown as soon as it hits the pan is to blot off any excess moisture with some paper towels. And then I'm adding about 2 tablespoons of light olive oil to our wok and then letting it come to a medium-high heat. And it's very important that our pan comes to temperature before we put in the meat. And then I'm just going to carefully lay in the pieces of steak until I've roughly covered the bottom of the wok. Then we're just going to flip them over with our tongs and then allow them to cook for about another minute or 2 until they're brown on the bottom as well. And then as soon as each piece is nice and brown on both sides, I'm just going to take it out and put it into a bowl. And then as soon as we've taken out all the meat, we can saute the onions. Now your wok will most likely have enough oil in it from the meat, but in case you don't, go ahead and add another tablespoon of light olive oil. Now I'm just going to toss in the onions, stir them around, give them a pinch of salt, and then just allow these to saute for about 2 to 3 minutes or until they start to soften. And as soon as I can tell that the onions are a little bit soft, we can go ahead and pour in our sauce. So very carefully, I'm just going to pour the sauce in to the middle of the wok and then stir it around with the onions. And then we'll just let this simmer for several minutes until it starts to thicken, because the cornstarch needs a couple minutes to do its thing and give us a nice thick sauce. So I'll come in and stir occasionally with my spatula to make sure it's all evenly cooked and to test the thickness. And then as soon as it's at your desired consistency, you can go ahead and add your meat back in. And then I'm going to turn off the heat and go ahead and just stir all the meat into the sauce. And then we can add our blanched broccoli on top. And then I'm just going to give this a quick stir so that it's lightly coated in the sauce as well. And now we have this gorgeous and unbelievably smelling broccoli beef. And it is ready to be served on top of your favorite rice or noodles or chow mein or whatever you like. But what I like is the idea of a sample. That is so good. As soon as you bite into that juicy steak, you just get a burst of the most delicious Asian flavors. I love the little bit of sweetness that's coming in from the honey, and I love the depth of flavor you get from the little bit of oyster sauce and the sesame oil, and I love that it's made with clean, natural ingredients. Well, thank you so much for joining me today in my kitchen, and I've included the link to this full recipe, and it's in the video description below. And that will take you to my website, gentletummy.com. And I also invite you to like and subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. And I cannot wait to have you join me again in my kitchen.